Keen observers of the ECF YouTube channel would have noticed that before this tournament started, there was a preview video called British Championship Shockers. And the game you're about to see could easily have been added to that video. Welcome everybody, this is Andrew Martin, and here comes my game of the day for round 8 of the 2015 British Championship. And it's the game between Grandmasters Keith Arkell and Aaron Summerscale, which was surprising to say the least. Well, Keith kicked off with d4, and we got a variation of the Slav on the board, the modern variation where black plays a6. There are many things that white can do. Keith stuck with the traditional e3, and now black played e6. Again, one of many responses. I seem to have seen this position in Anand's games quite a few times with the black pieces. Now comes a very committal move by white, a4, and a very good response to a4 is c5. This is the move Aaron played, hoping to make the pawn on a4 look out of place. The good thing about a4 is that it denies black the opportunity to play b5. The drawback to it clearly is that white has given up the b4 square. And Keith played c takes d5 in this position, a move which I don't really think should give black any problems whatsoever. Probably bishop d3 is a bit more challenging here, enticing black to take on c4. When we go back into positions resembling the Queen's Gambit accepted. But c takes d5, e takes d5, bishop e2. Keith goes through with his typical idea of weakening the opponent's pawn structure, hoping to rely on his technique. Nevertheless, this is a pretty good position for black despite his loose pawns. And Aaron confidently goes into an isolated queen's pawn position by taking on d4. Well, in IQP positions, it's a question of activity versus structure. White's hoping to be able to attack the isolated queen's pawn, perhaps to exchange some pieces, maybe to prove that the pawn is weak in an endgame. But the endgame's a long way off. Black's pretty active in this position, and he's got the additional benefit of being able to occupy b4 and also maybe to train his sights on the pawn at b3. This move a4, it's very double-edged in many respects. So black played queen to e7, again with a view to activity, possibly with the idea of queen e5 at some point. White played bishop b2, black castled, bishop f3, and now the queen came up to e5 threatening mate, whereupon white blocked with g3. Bishop h3. Well, basically this position is very satisfactory for black. He just has to avoid the trick which is coming up. A previous example which was played in Spain in 2007 went knight takes c6 here. But I don't believe that strengthening black's centre can give white anything. And for instance, after rook e1, rook b8, rook b1, queen g5, black had suitable activity. I mean, I think black's probably a little bit better here. So Keith tried to improve on that game by going rook e1, and by so doing set a devilish trap which Aaron falls straight into. Now it should be said here that either rook a c8, that's a good move here, or knight takes d4 are both okay for black. Perhaps Aaron didn't play knight takes d4 because he could see the exchange of queens coming up. But the fact is, after bishop e6, rook c1, rook c8, black is in no difficulty whatsoever. But here we go, the fateful moment. Black plays rook fd8. And can you now see what the Grandmaster overlooked? Bang. Knight takes d5. Completely overlooked by black. Out of nowhere, white fashions a winning shot in this position. It's quite incredible that suddenly black has a lost game. For instance, if he takes on d5, white takes on c6, opening up fire against the queen. The bishop's loose on b2, but so is the rook on d8. And the problem is that after rook takes d8, queen takes d5, there are no useful discoveries with the bishop, and therefore white is the exchange up. Dropping back in the game, let's drop back one move to the position after rook e1. There is a similar variation here after rook a c8. I did mention that move. Knight takes d5. Now this move's a mistake, because after knight takes d5, knight takes c6, queen takes b2. There's no rook on d8 for white to capture. Therefore, this is, again, more than satisfactory for black. So to the game. And knight takes d5. Aaron tried knight takes d4. Probably the best opportunity to complicate things. But bishop takes d4 was Keith's move. I mean, he could have taken with the pawn. The computer thinks that's perhaps slightly better than taking with the bishop. But you can see why white does this. Because by force, he's going to damage the black king position. So bishop takes b7. Black goes 2 pawns down. But as he's lost an extra pawn on the bonfire, doesn't really matter. What he's got to do is conjure up some complications. And showing a good sense of danger, Keith plays queen f3, avoiding the capture on a6, which computers recommend, but which human instinct tells us might create some weaknesses around the white king. Nevertheless, it seems as though white can survive any complications after, for instance, bishop b4, when black's hitting the rook and the bishop. Bishop drops back to c4, queen c6. Maybe this was the sort of position which Keith didn't like, because black's threatening mate. But bishop f1 is very good. Black takes the exchange, but although he manages to keep the exchange, his king position lies in ruins after queen h5. Well, of course, the move Keith plays is perfectly okay. He's following the formula that in a winning position or a very good position, you don't take any risks whatsoever. So bishop e5, black struggling to find counterplay, and now b4 by white. And bishop g4 hitting the queen. Queen to h1, burying the queen for the time being, but control of the long diagonal is the important thing. Perhaps queen e4, bishop f5, and only now queen h1 was most precise. But we're not going to split hairs over queen h1. Bishop takes d4 was played, e takes d4, black's got to move the queen, bishop comes back to f3, and there are some exchanges into a major piece. I think it's best to describe this as a late middle game. It's not an end game yet, because white can get attacking chances against the black king, clearly. So rook a c1, the best move in the position, with the idea of rook to c6. In the commentary room, we thought that b5 is interesting, forcing open lines with the idea, same sort of idea, of rook a6. If rook b4 in this position, rook a6, queen takes b5, we go rook takes f6. Rook b1 is black's best, and then there are some exchanges. Queen comes back to b7. Well, it could get complicated if white's best move is rook c6 here. I think Keith's move is better. It's much straightforward. It's much more straightforward. Black takes on b4 with his rook. The rook comes into c6, and now black has got very serious problems indeed. Queen a5. Well, Aaron was getting very short of time at this point, and at 30 seconds a move, it's really tricky when you've got to find a defence in a position like this. We thought that the original intention was rook b1, but then I think the weakness of the black king tells after takes, queen takes b1, check king g2, whereupon black lacks a good move. If he tries f5, which is the computer's first suggestion, white takes on a6, and if rook b3, queen d5 is a powerful centralisation, which should be pretty good for white, if not winning. After rook b1, let's see it again, takes, 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 king g2, rook b6, is that a defence? Well, we found queen g4 check, and black can't block with queen g6 because of rook takes b6, so he's got to go king f8, and then we go rook c8 check, king e7, and now the excellent queen d4. A quiet move which wins, as black is unable to defend his king satisfactorily. Well, queen a5 was played going back to the game. Queen a5, rook takes f6, rook takes a4, rook e7, and this should conclude the game extremely quickly. But after rook a1 check, king g2, queen b5, incredibly, with 7 minutes extra on the clock, Keith missed rook g6 check with imminent checkmate. Instead, he played king h3. Queen came into f1 check. I mean, I think it's just a bit lucky for white that black doesn't have anything here. He doesn't, of course. Aaron, with no time at all, played queen h1. And now second time lucky for Keith as he lands the decisive blow with rook g6 check. Black resigns. So an exciting game for the spectators. An unfortunate game for Aaron. But I think if we return to the fateful position where black overlooked knight takes d5, I think you'll agree that it's a pretty well disguised trap. Although perhaps alarm bells should start to ring, instincts should kick in and tell you that, you know, with the queen on the same diagonal as the bishop, it's not that comfortable. Nevertheless, an easy mistake to make. So we move on to round 9 today. And is that a lucky point for Keith? I suppose it is to a degree, but he showed good technique in finishing off the game.